Democrats issue another warning. There's a coup coming. We already had one, and now we might have another one. And so we've got Jaime Raskin and others who are laying the framework, or what I fear is going to be their attack strategy against Donald Trump. If Donald Trump caused an insurrection already and they prosecute him for that insurrection, they're going to say that he's going to do it again. And just like somebody who breaks the law repeatedly, courts don't let those people out. And so the Democrats are going to say Trump needs to be incarcerated or gagged or severely limited lest he insurrect again. They say he's going to be running again, and if he loses again, he's going to deny it again. And that justifies the DOJ and the courts doing something pretty serious. And this is not an isolated thought. There are many people now saying that Trump's conduct is essentially an ongoing crime, and that the old coup is just evidence that a new coup is coming down the line.
Tonight, Kari Lake in Arizona continues to lie about the election. Donald Trump continues to lie about the election. And in truth, no one has faced the consequences about lying about this election and undermining democracy.
Well, the political scientists will tell you that the single biggest predictor of coup coming is a recently failed coup, where the coup plotters are able to determine what are the weaknesses in the current regime that they can exploit next time, and what mistakes they made that they can correct in order to orchestrate a similar attack.
So they're probably going to have to hand off the podium next time. They're going to need like a relay race. So podium guy is going to have to give it to somebody else, and then he'll have to hand it off to somebody else in order to actually take control over the country, I think. Or I don't know what the plan is.
Yeah, in the future. And it's also the case from very clear historical studies that when an insurrection takes place, an attempted coup takes place, and there is not a complete, full accounting of what took place in a repudiation of the coup, that gives greater impetus to the coup plotters to go out and do it again. So this is a critical issue when you've got Donald Trump followers running around the country saying either Antifa did it, or it didn't really happen, or it's been overblown, or it was all a government plot. And, that's why it's great that people are standing up across the board to challenge the big lie and all of the other lies, the medium-sized lies and the little lies that follow in its train.
Amazing. So that's Raskin. Another coup is coming, and everybody basically better prepare themselves. This is the subscription service coup plotter plan. Every couple months they come out. Trump's going to take over the country again. Make sure you donate. Trump's going to take over the country. Make sure you donate. We're going to go through a coup again. Support the FBI. Support the Democrats. And so around and around we go. But I think it's more serious than that. They're actually going to try to limit Donald Trump in what he can do and say. And why I think that is because other people are saying that Trump's lies turn into actual threats. This is Jocelyn Benson. She was with the state of Michigan, and we spoke a lot about her when she was the Secretary of State back during the 2020 election, because there was lawsuits flying all over the place in many states. Michigan was one of them. And we were concerned that the election laws were being changed outside of the purview of the state legislature, because secretaries of state and judges and lawsuits brought by people like Mark Elias were nudging the rules more towards waivers, extension of deadlines, mail-in balloting, and all the things. And she was at the forefront of this in Antrim County and some of the other stories we covered in Michigan. And now she is emerging, and we hear from her how dangerous Donald Trump is.
And what did you tell Jack Smith's investigators?
I can't, as I've said, I don't want to compromise the investigation itself, but a lot of what I've said is already public through my testimony to the January 6th committee hearing before Congress in 2022. So a lot of the focus is on Antrim County. We know that. A lot of the experiences that we had were about how lies and threats transform themselves and manifested themselves. I'm sorry, how lies around our elections transformed themselves into threats against us personally, and how that impacted us.
Good, much better.
And not to mention the false slate of electors, which appears to be a very intentionally coordinated effort to lie to the federal government about who won an election.
We saw a couple little sound bites there. So the first take on that was not that good. She had to take two takes on that one. Donald Trump's lies turned into election. Sorry, I screwed it up. So let me start that over again. What I meant to say is Donald Trump's lies almost turned into murder for me. What I meant to say is Donald Trump almost murdered me. Okay, and the producers were back there like, got it. All right, good. Got it the third time. Yeah, more of that. Well, a lot more of that. Trump's lies turn into actual threats. She nails it. She's like, whoo, got it.
In 2022. So a lot of the focus is on Antrim County. We know that. A lot of the experiences that we had were about how lies and threats transformed themselves and manifested themselves. I'm sorry, how lies around our elections transformed themselves into threats against us personally, and how that impacted us. Not to mention the false slate of electors, which appears to be a very intentionally coordinated effort effort.
See that there? The false slate of electors is going to be the other angle on this. That's the intentionality. That's Trump not accepting the final conclusion and then now coordinating and reorganizing to seize power in the country. So she might even be a witness, right? She might be somebody who comes in and testifies in some way, shape, or form, depending on some of the pressure that was, maybe put on her county or whatever, or her state.
To lie to the federal government about who won an election.
Amazing. So we know where this is going. They are gearing up and they're just putting their pieces in place. Trump and his lies turned into actual threats that put her at risk and that may have broken the law. We'll see what Jack Smith does with it. Now, this is another woman over on CNN, and she's going to walk us through this reasonable person standard. This is something that exists in the law. We often will zoom out on cases and we'll ask ourselves objectively, did that thing that a person do, is that something that a reasonable person in that person's position would do? We often see this like in self-defense cases. Would a reasonable person have taken that out and defended himself in that way? And you say, well, yeah, I mean, it's reasonable. Why? Well, because that guy had a knife and he was coming at him and all the things. So we're asking ourselves, would Trump be a reasonable person to deny the outcome of the 2020 election? Is there any basis in that? She says no. There's no reasonable basis. No reasonable person could ever believe what Trump did.
I see it, I receive it, but legally speaking, what would be the consequence of him really believing that he won the election?
Well, look, you know this as a former prosecutor. I know this as an attorney. It goes to the state of mind, right? So that's what he's trying to probe. Did he really believe this? Thus, did he lose his mind? Because honestly, he would have to not been in his right mind to believe that he won an election that he clearly lost, right? Aides were telling him that he lost the election. You have texts from Fox personalities and others going back and forth on January 6th about he needs to shut this down. You opened with Cassidy Hutchinson and her testimony, which I think was devastating, right? And Mark Meadows and how they felt about the president's state of mind before January 6th and otherwise. Chris Christie has talked about it, right? Many times on the campaign trail. So I think that there's no way he believed that he won that election. I think he decided he was going to take the election and overturn it.
That's the line that they're going to have to cross. It's pretty amazing that she just jumps to the conclusion that Trump could never have believed the alternative, which is amazing because we sat here believing the alternative, and I like to think we're somewhat reasonable here, but we saw all sorts of other mounds of evidence that showed that the election was highly problematic, and we covered it here. We covered the lawsuits here. Now, the fact that a judge wasn't willing to reverse an election doesn't mean that there were constitutional problems with it, and there are court filings that support that, and we could point to many of them where the state legislatures were usurped by the secretaries of states and the courts in various different places that mattered, like Pennsylvania. So this is interesting, and I think as the time goes by, as the story evolves, we find that there's even more evidence, as now we know that Secretary of State Antony Blinken colluded with the CIA director, Mike Morell. They created the 51 Hunter Biden laptop excuse cover-up letter, and they shoved that down all of our gullets, along with the FBI putting pressure on Facebook and Twitter to suppress conservative speech, to stop anybody who is speaking out on behalf of Donald Trump, and the list goes on and on. So it is, I think, entirely reasonable for Donald Trump to be in the position that he lost the election and to pursue that as far as he can take it. We live in an adversarial system where you're allowed to do that, and that's exactly what he did. And it went all the way up to January 6th, and Mike Pence went in there and did what Mike Pence did. And all of that is legal. They may not like it, but it's Trump believing thoroughly in his heart that the election was lost and that he was pursuing every available option till the end of time. That is not criminal. They're trying to turn it into a criminal by saying no reasonable person would have believed that, but that's her position on that. I think there are plenty of reasonable people who saw the votes. We were watching them here all go like this, and then boom, all the mail-in ballots and everything suddenly changed. And it was a very strange affair that gets stranger by the day, but they're going to try to make this criminal now, okay? That Trump believed that. They're going to try to backfill this whole thing. I think personally that the days that go by, Trump's position becomes more reasonable, not less.
And if you really go back and look at Trump's rhetoric, starting as early as before the conventions of 2020, he was leading up to that about, well, I don't pledge to accept the results unless, I have to see. There was this wishy-washiness, right?
The hedging of if it's fair.
Giving myself this plausible kind of deniability out that, well, I don't want to box myself in like every other ordinary person who runs for president says, yes, if I lose the election, I congratulate the other person and we do a transition and we move forward.
That's the word that I hone in on, plausible deniability.
There it is.
Because in the law, one has to have some plausible basis to believe that statement in terms of the intent. It's a very difficult thing to prove, though. And I wonder, do you agree with what Jim talked about, that the fact that Kushner picks have been now questioned, that makes this that much closer to the maybe beginning of the end?
Well, Laura, I mean, he would be derelict in his duty as the special prosecutor if he didn't go into that inner sanctum sanctorum, right, of people who would have had conversations with the president on election night, after the election day, and get to his state of mind. So I think he is closing the loop. I agree with your earlier guess about that he's winding this down to bring an indictment.
They want somebody to come out and say, I talked to Trump, and Trump said, I know I lost, but we're going to take it anyways. I know Biden won, but can we do this? They're looking for somebody who can thread that needle, and they might find somebody. They might make somebody up. We know who we're dealing with here. But the clock is ticking. We have a timeline to attend to, and we know that Jack Smith has been hinting that a January 6th prosecution would be coming any minute now. We've read through many leaks from the New York Times and WAPO and all the other places. It should be soon because they want to get the trials done quickly. They're already fighting to get the Florida case trial done by December, and so if they have a DC case, they're going to want to get that one done quickly too, and the longer they wait, the more this encroaches into election season, which will then make it more difficult to have the trial right in the middle of that era. So now we know Fani Willis, the biggest Fani in all of Georgia. I don't know anybody bigger than this Fani, and she is about to prosecute Donald Trump, she says, by the end of this month. And what does that mean for Jack Smith? Does that mean he has to accelerate his case? Because it is very similar, a lot of overlap. Here is the report.
Federal prosecutors do not exactly love when parallel local investigations outpace their own. They want their evidence and their theory of the case to be the first version that the public hears. So DA Willis poses a problem for special counsel Smith. DA Willis has signaled that she anticipates announcing
Fani, yeah, the biggest Fani here. Biggest Fani in all of Fulton County. I don't know anybody who's a bigger Fani than Fani Willis. She's the state attorney. I mean, that's big. Like, you got to be a high up person. Fani Willis is the biggest Fani in all of Georgia. So you can see the timeline on this. July, August, we are nearing the end of July. And so Fani Willis indictment likely, they have the green arrow that comes all the way up to the 18th of August. But it could be as soon as July 31st when the grand jury is being impaneled. So it's coming up. And so if Jack Smith is going to increase or going to bring his indictment first, it's going to be coming soon, like in the next 2 weeks.
An indictment potentially as early as July 31st. That gives special counsel Smith 11 business days to make his own announcement, assuming he wants to make it first. And that is not the only calendar that Jack Smith has to worry about. There has been endless speculation about what the 2024 presidential calendar will mean for Smith's prosecutorial decisions.
Coming up.
And today, we finally heard about the matter from the man himself.
Yeah, he filed a motion. We already read that motion. It was a motion for a protective order and a motion for a response to Trump asking for an indefinite continuance. And so we heard about all of that, but they are assembling the talking points, warning that another coup is coming because the Trump indictment is right around the corner. And here is James Comer explaining what he thinks about MSNBC and their audience.
They know this family was money laundering. They were profiting off Joe Biden's influence. The media knows that. They're just not covering it. Then you have the liberal media like MSNBC with their low IQ audience that are sitting there and they're being told bad things about me and members of the oversight committee because we have the audacity to investigate.
Yeah, not too bright over there. But they do say that there is another coup coming, and I think it's just something to keep their audience engaged and donating and voting. And this is the new campaign. They're not going to be running Joe Biden on a new vision for America or a track record of accomplishment. They're running Joe Biden on the back of the DOJ prosecuting Biden's political opponents. And every day that they can wake up and press that fear button that Trump is going to coup again, it's going to be a good day for them.